But friends, it looks like the first animal we're going to come across is going to be over here on our right hand side. Now of course I'm seeing a zebra over here. There might be a couple more around. Now more specifically, this is a Hartman's mountain zebra, and we can tell that because their stripes don't go all the way around their bellies. Now a lot of people ask me, Mackenzie, are zebras white with black stripes or black with white stripes? And the answer really just depends. So if you take a look at the color of their nose, Hartman's mountain zebras typically have black noses, which means they have black skin. Therefore, they are black with white stripes. Now, of course, coming up, it looks like that they're going to be off on the right-hand side, as well as we make our way around this turn up here, I'm seeing one off on our left-hand side as well. Now, these are Ankole cattle, also known as the Watusi cattle, named after the people who first domesticated them. So, of course, it's these guys with the huge horns over here. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, holy Ankole, those horns look heavy. But they're actually hollow on the inside. They're made of a honeycomb-like structure that helps circulate their blood flow and cool them off. Now, of course, I mentioned that they are domesticated out in Africa, but instead of being used for their meat or for their milk, they're actually used as a symbol of status. So that essentially means that the more Ankole cattle you have, the richer you are perceived to be. Now, of course, if we take a look over here on our left-hand side, I'm seeing a couple of African wild dogs kind of scattered around. They kind of blend in a little bit with the den here, as well as some of the rocks. But it looks like I'm seeing a good majority of them under this tree here. Now, African wild dogs are also known as the painted dogs, and that's because each of their coats is individual to them. It's kind of like a fingerprint. Now, I know these guys look really cute and really cuddly, and they even belong to the same canine category that our furry friends at home do. However, they are some of the fiercest predators out here on the Savanna. Their hunting success rate comes in at about 90%. And to put that in perspective, a lion's hunting success rate is only about 20%. But of course, taking a look a little bit further back behind these Ankole cattle here, I'm seeing those antelope that also have some pretty tall horns. Now those are the sable antelope. Sable antelope are known as the emblem here at the Harambe Wildlife Reserve, and that's because when it comes to that fight or flight response, they always fight back to protect their herd. They're also one of the only prey species that has that fight instinct as well. But friends, it looks like as we make this turn, of course, over here on the right-hand side, we're going to see a couple of those wildebeest. Now, wildebeest make up a very large part of the Great Migration, about 80%. That's because over 1.5 million of them will travel over hundreds and hundreds of miles every single year in search of the freshest grass. But of course, over here on our left-hand side, I am seeing a giraffe here. Now, more specifically, this is a Maasai giraffe, and we can tell that because of their spot pattern. Maasai giraffe have those jagged jigsaw-like patterns, whereas reticulated giraffes have a more square or rectangular-like pattern. Now friends, up ahead we might be able to see a couple more giraffe, and if we get lucky enough to get close enough, you might want to take a look at the color of their tongue. Now that's because giraffes have naturally colored purple tongues, and that's to be used as a sunscreen for them, because for about 20 hours a day their entire job is to eat. And that's to keep up with their incredibly high metabolism, so you would assume that 20 hours a day in the hot African sun, their tongue might get a little hot, a little toasty. Now that's where that purple color comes into play, and it is used as a natural sunscreen for them. But it looks like coming up on our left-hand side, I'm seeing this pretty tall antelope over here. Now this is a Patterson's eland. Patterson's eland are the largest antelope in the entire world, standing at 6 feet at the shoulder. And they can also jump up to 6 feet straight in the air from a standing position. But it looks like coming right up ahead, off on our right-hand side, I'm seeing some of these smaller antelope that kind of look like s'mores on legs, if you ask me. Now these are springbok. Springbok are pretty tiny for antelope, but they pack a powerful punch. They can actually reach top speeds of up to 50 miles an hour, jump 6 feet straight in the air and 13 feet out in a motion called pronking. Friends, it looks like we are going to be able to see a couple more giraffe over here on our left-hand side, as well as one more Patterson's eland. Now, the one we saw back there was a female. It was a little bit lighter in color, but this is going to be a male here, and of course, those two giraffe. But friends, it looks like right up ahead, I'm also seeing some trees that might have been knocked down. Now, of course, that's a pretty good indication we are headed into elephant territory because, after all, elephants are the natural bulldozers of the savanna. Now, not to worry, though, even though they knock down a lot of these trees year after year on their migration patterns, it doesn't mean that they can't help replant the savanna as well. Now, the reason I say that is because their stomachs can't necessarily digest seeds, so those seeds end up passing straight through their system and are able to be replanted throughout the savanna. Now, of course, with that being said, it looks like just on the other side of this watering hole here, we are going to see this larger male elephant. As well as over here on our left-hand side, I'm also seeing some mandrill monkeys. Now, mandrill monkeys are the largest of the monkey species, coming in at about 100 pounds each. Now, they usually hang out in groups all the way up to 100, called troops, and it's pretty easy to tell the difference between the males and the females because the males have those really bright red and blue face colorations like our friend Rafiki from The Lion King, and the females are a little bit more dull in color. But of course, friends, going back to these elephants typically follow a matriarchal herd pattern, and that's just a really fancy word for saying that grandma gets to call all of the shots. So the matriarch is typically the oldest and the largest of the herd, and she is always female, and she is always in charge. Now, of course, she's in charge of things like migration patterns. Elephants typically follow the same migration patterns that have been passed down generation to generation over hundreds and hundreds of years. Now, once male elephants reach about teenage years, oftentimes they will leave the herd. Sometimes they'll go off on their own, or sometimes they'll form their own herds called bachelor herds. Now, friends, I know we got pretty close to that elephant back there, but fingers crossed up ahead, we might be able to run into a couple more, and that's because we are going to be headed down into the red clay pits. Now, of course, that's a pretty good indication that we might be able to see a couple more elephants, and that's because as we pass under this bridge up ahead, I want you guys to take a look off on your right-hand side. You'll be able to see some tusk marks that have been left by elephants. So essentially, they'll come over here, they'll scrape this red clay off with their tusks, and they'll eat it to get some minerals and nutrients that they might not get in their regular day-to-day diet. So it's kind of like a multivitamin for them. Now, of course, friends, speaking of those tusks, elephants typically have a dominant tusk, much like you or I have a dominant hand. Now, the easiest way to tell if they are left-handed or right-handed, so to speak, is that their dominant tusk is typically a little bit shorter than their non-dominant tusk, and that's just from being rubbed down and used more often over the years. Now, of course, those tusks are some of their most valuable assets as they are made out of ivory. Now, ivory is illegal to buy, sell, and trade, and since those international trade laws have been put in place back in the late 80s, early 90s, we have seen an increase in the elephant population and, of course, a decrease in the poaching of these elephants. So, of course, our conservation efforts are working, but we're not done yet. That's because elephants are still listed as vulnerable on the endangered species list. Now, one of the reasons it's taking the elephant population so long to grow is because of their gestation period. Elephants have the longest gestation period in all of the animal kingdom, which is about 22 months. Now, that essentially means that elephant moms are pregnant for just shy of 2 years, and the responsibilities don't end there. Once that 500-pound calf is born, it often goes and nurses off of mom for the next 2 to 4 years. So it looks like we are going to be coming up on the smaller herd here. So as I round this turn here, I will definitely make a stop so we can get some good pictures. I know that the tree's kind of in the way there, but and friends, hopefully as we make our way around the flamingo pool up here, we should be able to see them kind of through the weeds over here a little bit better. We'll talk about these flamingos since we're here. Now, more specifically, these are greater flamingo. Greater flamingo are the largest of the flamingo species, but they're also the lightest shade of pink. Now, if you see any of those flamingos out on the island that aren't necessarily pink yet, they're more of that gray or white color. Those are actually baby flamingos. Baby flamingos are hatched that gray color, and they get their pink coloration later on in life due to their diet, which is very high in beta carotene and mainly consists of brine shrimp. Now, of course, friends, taking a look at those elephants back there, it looks like that they are using those trunks to throw dirt up on their backs. Now, of course, that's to be used as a sunscreen for them, but each individual elephant trunk actually has over 40,000 muscles each. taking a look over here on our left hand side, right next to that mud wallow there, I am seeing those white patterned animals. Now those are the scimitar horned oryx. Now the scimitar horned oryx are desert dwelling animals, and they can actually go up to 9 months out of the year without drinking a single drop of water. Now really quickly over here on our right hand side as well, I am seeing one of those white rhinos, but not to worry, we're pretty much going to do a really big U-turn up ahead, and we're going to pull right past that spot there. So hopefully, as long as they stay put, we should be able to see them pretty close. But of course, going back to the scimitar horned oryx, like I said, they're desert dwelling animals, and their internal body temperature can reach about 115 degrees Fahrenheit before they even start to sweat. Now of course they get their name because of the shape of their horns. It does loosely resemble the scimitar sword. But as we make this turn, it looks like right over here on our left hand side, I'm seeing 2 cheetahs. They're going to be kind of in this pile of fallen limbs. So I'm seeing one laying down as well as one kind of sitting up a little bit facing us. Now cheetahs are of course the fastest land mammal on Earth and can reach top speeds of up to 70 miles an hour. Now of course that's really fast, but they actually can't hold that speed for very long. They can only hold it for about 100 yards, or the length of an American football field, so that speed does often come in spurts. My friends, it looks like we're going to be able to see one more right behind this line of bushes here off on our left hand side there. Looks like he's kind of tucked under those palm fronds. But of course, speaking of big cats, up ahead I am seeing a kopje rock formation. Now kopje rocks are usually where the lions like to hang out. That's because they can use it as a pretty good vantage point to see over the rest of the savanna, just like this female lion is doing right here on that second tallest rock. Now friends, for about 20 hours a day, the entire job of a lion is to sleep. That's because they're mainly nocturnal, which of course means that they are more active at night and more dormant during the day. Now when they are more active at night, the females are going to be the ones who go out and do most of the hunting, while the males stay back and protect the pride, kind of like a stay-at-home dad. But as we make this turn, I want you guys really quickly to take a look over here on our right hand side. I'm seeing that smaller brown antelope, that white streak going down his face. Now that is a bontebok. Bontebok are my favorite animals to talk about out here on the safari, and that's because they have an incredible conservation story attached to them. So at one point in time, there were only 14 bontebok left in the entire world. It means they were only 14 away from complete and total extinction. That is until one farmer out in Africa took notice, brought them in, built a reserve around them, and now their numbers are up and thriving once again, and they are no longer listed on the endangered species list. But of course it looks like we are going to get a pretty good view of this female here as we make this turn. So I'll pull up right here and we can get some good pictures.
I hope it wars. Are those real rocks? Yeah.
No. Maybe. I don't know.
They're made of plastic.
Well, they might just be concrete.
Ostrich.
Yeah, friends, it looks like coming up right over here on our left-hand side, I am seeing this ostrich. It looks like, see 3 of them actually. Now, ostriches are, of course, the largest flightless bird in the entire world. They can actually reach up to 45 miles an hour on foot. Yeah, friends, it looks like that white rhino might have made its way back over to the mud wallow. I'm unfortunately not seeing it, but we can still talk about them. Now, white rhinos are the larger of the rhino species, coming in at about 5,000 pounds. Now, both black and white rhinos are actually not named for the color of their skin because they're both just a different coloration of gray. Instead, white rhinos were originally named white rhinos with a V, and that comes from the Afrikaans language meaning wide, pertaining to those broad square mouths that they used to graze those grasses. But of course, friends, it looks like as we cross this smaller bridge here, we are going to be headed into Magadi Glen. Now, Magadi Glen is where the warden's post is, which is, of course, where the warden lives. Now, the warden likes to live right on the outskirts of the village, but just close enough to the reserve where you can have access to all of our animals here at the Harambe Wildlife Reserve to make sure that they are all safe, happy, and healthy. Now, of course, it looks like that the warden has domesticated a couple of these Nigerian dwarf goats. So it looks like that they are all hanging out. Now, I know these guys look pretty tiny, but these are full-grown adults.
Yeah.
Now, they actually provide economic stability to the village here, and that's because their milk products are very high in protein and very
Over there.
sweet. So those milk products are often
Over
sold.
there.
Now, that does, of course, mean that the people of the village rely less on the wildlife in the areas, which, of course, in turn helps protect the wildlife and their habitats around these parts as well. So really, it's a win-win situation overall. But friends, I did mention that the warden lives pretty close to the village, which means that as I make this turn, we will also be making our trek back into the village, which means that our 2-week adventure has come to an end. Now, I know that those 2 weeks only felt like 28 minutes and 22 seconds, but time sure does fly when we are having fun. Now, just because the safari is over doesn't mean it's over for you guys, and that is because conservation lives within all of us here at Disney's Animal Kingdom. So if you guys are sticking around with us for the rest of the day, you are more than welcome to head to any of our merchandise locations, some of our food and beverage locations, or